Welcome to this special mini episode on International Men's Day. What a glorious day. I'm spending my International Men's Day helping facilitate a workshop, a day-long workshop, day-long retreat, whatever you want to call it, with Uncommon Man. But today I'm going to talk about what men really need. Because I think we often talk about mental health from a perspective of men, telling men what they need. And I work in the trenches with men, individual men, especially in their lives. And though these men would not necessarily say they have mental health issues when they come to talk to me, many of them will fall into a bucket of suffering from anxiety, a level of depression, a level of loneliness in their lives. Definitely. It's definitely what I see in a lot of the men I work with. And I'm going to kind of focus on three areas. But before I do that, I'm going to say I was looking for some studies, right? And one of the studies I saw is that 40% of men in the UK wouldn't discuss their mental health with a close friend, a family member, or a professional. And a number of them, just felt like that is not something they'd want to do, which is, I get that. And a big percentage of those men, of that 40%, we're calling that the 100%, 36%, which is just over a third of them, said they didn't wish to burden anyone. And I think this is a really interesting thing about men is like, in some narratives of men, there's this idea that men are really selfish and they just do what they want. But actually, I think there's a large proportion of men here who don't want to burden people with their problems, who feel like telling someone their problems burdens them, which I think maybe says a lot about how they feel when people tell them their problems. Maybe I don't want to. Not necessarily, but that's a possibility. And the biggest cause of men's health issues are often work, their finances, and their health. Work stress, instability, and so forth. And then there's another study I was looking at, and it talked about how for the last 30 years, average male earnings have steadily declined throughout many Western countries, while women's has steadily increased. And the increase of women is perfectly reasonable because, if you go back 30 years, we're looking at, mid 80s, mid to late 80s, mid 80s. And women's earnings were just less, even when they're doing exactly the same job, and considerably less than now. And the same study talked a bit about some stuff around what really impacts men's mental health. And there's things like divorce and the breakup of relationships. They are four times more likely than women to really suffer mental health issues to suffer depression after the breakdown of relationship. And it also goes on to talk about, I'm just reading here because this is some stuff here, but it just really talks about one of the key factors of what influences man's struggles after divorce or breakup is a loss of social support and a loss of emotional connectivity, right? Which I think is a really interesting aspect, especially the support and the emotional connectivity, because those are important in a man's life to having him feel good and feeling stable. And another point also inside this study was around the loss of custody and the negative influences and impacts of the court system. And they found it really stressful going through that and so forth. And it caused many men to turn to suicide or abuse. There was another study I looked at and it talked a lot about how men and women deal with things differently. There's some ideas and beliefs, some beliefs that women internalize things more likely. They're more likely to go, okay, let me think internally about what's going on, feeling, and look for emotional solutions. And men are more likely to be externally focused and be problem-solving solutions. But also that also means that men are more likely to seek substances and things to avoid the problems. And women are more prone to ruminating. But they're saying that this isn't necessarily completely true. It's a bit of a overstated thing as well. So what am I saying about all this? One of the things I think, and I see this from men I work with, and I see this with other coaches I speak to, a big thing that's missing for men in their lives and causing mental health issues for a lot of men is a lack of meaning and purpose. And having a job isn't necessarily mean you have meaning and purpose. I know a lot of men in very good jobs, very high paying jobs or not so high paying jobs who lack meaning and purpose. And one of the things that these statistics I read out here what they say to me is like, a relationship and children give you meaning and purpose, right? They just automatically give your life meaning and purpose. That's my experience, and I see this one again. A lot of men, there's someone who you care about, who cares about you, and that you are supporting and helping and looking after and so forth. This gives our life meaning, and if we have connection with those people, our lives have more meaning and purpose. Obviously, if you're doing work that is deeply meaningful for you, like I'd say my work is very meaningful for me. And that's also going to be something, right? That work's going to be really meaningful for you as a man, and that's going to give you energy for life. Now, if you are doing a job that is very dull or very uninteresting, you dislike, then you have no meaning, and your mental health is going to suffer from that, because you will ask an existential question of like, why am I here and what am I doing, right? And this is a big thing that I don't think gets really talked about much, is like this meaning and purpose piece. And when you bring in the fact that men's roles in society in general have been changing over the last kind of 40, 50, 60 years, men are generally feeling that they have less meaning and purpose in society in general, right? And if you bring in the often narrative that's kind of said about men, men built the world and they fucked up the whole world, that's also then diminishing any meaning they're having now and see them and bad and wrong. And I can't get away from how often I'll write a post about men's struggles or how men are doing or something like that, and someone will come in and be like, well, the world's built for men, men should be doing fine, what's their problem, they need to sort their shit out. And I just don't think that it's that simple, because if the world was built for men, why do say men of colour or gay men still struggle in life and in the world? Or was the world really built by affluent men or very wealthy men, or the controlling classes of men? And those men are probably very, very small in number, and really the trickle-down effect of benefit for men after that probably goes along the lines of education and social class, especially in the UK, meaning that a man who is, say, a working class man has far less power than a woman who's, say, upper middle class or upper class. But I digress. But my point here is there's a desire for meaning and purpose in men's lives. And this interconnects with the other piece I think is really important, which is connection, right? Which is, when I say connection, I mean romantic relationships, friendships, even work relationships. That connection that has us be like, I'm meaningful in somebody's life. And I think what a lot of men are struggling with is that they're lonely, they're disconnected, right? They don't have people in their lives to connect with, and they're struggling with maybe financial problems or work problems, and they're lonely, they're struggling financially, they maybe have health issues as well, and then they start to feel like, what is the point of my life? And all it takes is for one big life problem or life shift to happen, and it can take him on a big downturn, right? It's this piece of meaning, really meaningful connections as well. And this is why I kind of do the work that I do in bringing men together, because what I see time and time again is when you bring men together to talk, discuss, learn together, they become happier. They become happier. If they show up and they connect and they do the practices and they work together, they become happier. It's what every single program I've run, a group program, I ask a question about happiness in there, like, are you happier than when you came in? And every single time, 100% of the men, yep, I feel happier. I feel more connected. I feel more confident. There's a real power in coming together in connection. I think this is to me, is one of the central pieces of men's mental health, is this lack of meaningful connection and deep connection in their lives. And obviously there's the financial issues and work that are very important as well, because that can be both purposeful, and the fact that money stress is huge, right? It's a huge weight to carry, knowing you're not going to have any money, you're struggling to pay your bills. But I think that the thing that we could do, the thing that's really been missing, is a lot of these kind of social clubs that used to exist in places. I think there's a whole book about bowling clubs, and I can't remember the name of the book, and it talks about how the declining bowling clubs has really hurt men, because they don't get together, they don't meet anybody and so forth. And I don't have any statistics here about male loneliness, but I know male loneliness is very high in London and around the UK. So there's all these pieces, this connection, which I think is really important. And there's another piece, which is what men really need is listening, right? Not hearing. Hearing is slightly different in my eyes. Hearing is like, I heard your words, like the words entered my brain. Listening is like, I heard you, and I really heard you, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm feeling what you're saying, right? Some empathy, some compassion, and even responding with a desire to be curious and understand more. I think often when it comes to men's problems, and it's not all the time, but I see this in the online landscape. Often I can see it myself sometimes, where people hear men and it's like, well, the listing of men's problems is like, oh, you're a man, like you built the world, the whole world, just the patriarchy, you're benefiting from it. Just go sort out your own fucking problems, or it's not my problem, kind of thing. And I think that this is super dismissive of men's issues and boys' issues. I'm probably not going to talk about boys' issues so much in this episode, but there's a wonderful book called Of Boys and Men by Richard Reeves, which really talks about the issues and so forth that men and boys struggle with. But I do think we need to stop kind of overlooking men's distress, or downplaying men's distress. Like how we talk about man flu, like, it's just man flu. It's just being, pretending he's sick. Or maybe we look at men and think, they're depressed. He's just pretending to be depressed. And inside the listening, when we talk about men's mental health and what's really going to help men, is actually listening for the way that men will often talk about their life and themselves. It's something that I've seen for myself and personally, and even some of the women I know, like men and women can often communicate in different ways, right? In that, as men, we're kind of taught not to use that many words and not to really express emotion and not really like gesticulate or even have different tonality when we talk. Many men can actually sound quite monotone or very almost numb, or even just don't really put much energy into when they're talking. They may come to you with a problem and be like, yeah, I'm not feeling great. And we can quite easily hear that and think, oh yeah, he's just not feeling great today, and gloss over that and maybe talk about something else. But I think sometimes men really drop in the subtle cues of what's going on with them, and no one's really listening. And that might be just because people in their lives are super busy, they've got partners, they've got children, all these things. So I guess in this is what I'm inviting you to do is, like, if there's men in your life, just listen to them a little harder. Listen to understand and empathize and have compassion, instead of listening from the perspective of assuming you know what they're saying. So ask some questions that are curious. Like, are you feeling down at work? Like, what happened? How long have you been feeling like this? And just keep asking. And it's not the case to go, but they should be adults. They should be able to say what's going on for them. We don't always do that. Men and women. We don't always have the skills to know what's going on for us just at the drop of the hat when someone asks. And obviously there's some work on individual men to learn the emotional literacy and communication skills and so forth. And there's also a societal piece of work to teach young men and boys these pieces, right? Communication, because if we have so many women easily being able to articulate themselves and describe and talk and feel, and boys are being completely left out, it's not just because of sex difference. There must be some underlying mechanics that are occurring, whether that's in our education system or our society and how our social dynamics work. But I guess what I see in all of this is the lack of connection. I come back to again, whether that's connection in loving relationships, whether that is connection in friendships, whether that's connection in work and in mission and purpose. The thing that men that really need is connection to themselves as well, to their own feelings, thoughts, ideas and desires and goals. And those are the things that, I feel like we can all individually as men, we can start to look at our lives and go, man, I feel a bit lonely. What do I need to do? What can I do about that? And also examining the thoughts and stories you tell yourself, because if you're a man, you listen to this, and as soon as you think about meeting new people, you think, they're not going to like me. I'm not going to find anyone who I'm going to get along with. I don't know where to do that. And all these reasons why you can't, and all these excuses of why it's not going to work. Then you're going to act out from that place as if that is the truth. Because the truth is, there's lots of men's groups, whether that's online or in person. There's plenty of sports clubs, running clubs, chess clubs, all these little things. Even something I'm looking at doing again is rock climbing, bouldering. There's all these things you can go and try and do where there's other people, where you can connect with other human beings who have a shared interest and find meaning for yourself and enjoyment, which we know is really good for our mental health. Connection, enjoyment, purpose, work, play, exercise. These are all things that are just known to be wonderful for our mental health. And, you know, our lives, as I always say to the men I work with, is like, your life is your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility to make sure that you have a good life. It's yours. So if your life isn't the way you want it to be, and you're an adult man and you want to change that, then you have to, or you get to, make a difference and change that. And maybe that's a conversation with a friend, you know, creating a group or so-and-so, or it's finding a coach or a therapist or a healer of some type and doing some work on that. And I highly, highly recommend that. You know, we often, as it said at the beginning of the episode, we don't want to burden people, or we don't want to share our problems, or we don't want to be embarrassed by telling someone we've got a problem. All that fades away very quickly when you have a conversation, when you talk to a therapist or a coach. And I know from my experience of talking to men, the number of times that we get on a phone call and I can tell they're visibly nervous and scared and I'm worried. And I tell them that this is a space without judgment, that you can be free to speak openly. And then we have a conversation, we talk for 90 minutes. The number of times I've got emails afterwards from men, and all I've done really is listen, you know, ask a few questions here and there, but very much just listen. And they're like, I feel so much lighter. I feel so much ease. I feel so much happier. I feel, you know, and all they've done is talk. So talking helps, especially when someone is listening and someone is trained to listen, or someone cares enough to listen. And if you don't have a friend, maybe you feel can have that level of listening, then finding a therapist or a coach to do so is well worth, in your benefit of you feeling better about your life. And obviously you could be listening to this and think, my life is good, I don't really need to do that. Well, would you like your life to be great? You know, that's the ballpark I play in. And a lot of the people I know and friends we play in is like, good life is okay, cool, that's nice, but we want life to be great, excellent, incredible. Because there's all these little tweaks we can make to our lives, whether that's around connection, around how we communicate, whether that's our self-talk and so forth, to improve the level of our enjoyment of our own lives. So, hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you listen to this and you are a single man and you want to create shifts and changes in your dating life, you want your dating life to go from okay to great, I'm running a program that's going to be in January and February. It's called, I've only just named it. I named it last night. It's called the Men's Dating Accelerator. And I'm going to take you through a wonderful journey of how to create deeper connection, how to get more dates. There's an online dating masterclass with a special guest who I'm really excited to bring in. And really going to help you know exactly what you need to put in your profile to have it stand out, and how to message and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to take you through a lot of stuff around, getting over fears, getting over overthinking and so forth. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the bio. The link is in the show notes. It's only £150 at the moment. Until the end of November, that's the price. You don't need to contact me directly. You can just go straight to my website and purchase that. And then you'll get some more details. You'll probably get a personalized email at this point from me. And that will be starting in midway through January for 5 weeks. But thank you for joining me on International Wednesday. Until next time, ciao, ciao.